here. Are you recording? Cool. Anybody know the quadratic formula? Besides currently Devin.
Plus or minus.
No.
That's the square root. Because I got measured. No, no, it's weird.
Garrett, you like? Can you send the quadratic formula for us?
I know that. X equals negative b plus or minus square root.
X equals negative b plus or minus squared. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All you gotta do is sing a song, kid.
I was seeing it in Mosquitoes today.
At least you sing it on key.
It's not a hard song. It's to roll your boat. Because x equals negative b plus or minus squared. B squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
Make a rap of that in my background.
Well, one thing I've noticed your generation's having problems with is where A, B, and C come from. That's not supposed to be where you have a problem. What's a standard form of a quadratic?
S squared x oh, yeah, it was a 0 there.
Equal to 0. That's where you get the letters A, B, and C from, kids. That is. That's where you get those letters from. It's not supposed to be what we struggle with. It's really not. In fact, you're not supposed to struggle with this thing at all. Before we at least go to lunch, let's see if we can pick out A, B, and C on this one. But can we? The way it's written?
Yes.
Even Zach says no. You can't.
Is it x squared a 3x is b, 3x is b?
Sorry, Garrett. I done told you you couldn't. And you sat there and didn't listen to me. Why can't you pick out the values? It's not in standard form. Did you write down standard form, Garrett, when I came over? Is it in standard form?
I mean, it looks like it.
No, it's equal to 0. It's 52 now.
Garrett, what's standard form equal to?
0. Sorry for being wrong. Sorry.
Well, you're not the only one. It's just I told you wrong. You argued with me. That's pointless. Where's the 2 belong, Garrett?
Where's the,
On the other side after the 3. What happens if we don't equal? All right, let's pick out A, B, and C. Austin, what's A?
1.
How'd you know that?
Because imaginary 1 equals
It's not imaginary. It's understood. It's understood. It's unimaginary. Morgan, let's see. What's B?
3.
Madison, let's see. We don't have enough time to do anything with this. You guys have lunch. We'll start lunch Hopefully it's, yeah, the audio's on, so yes, stop talking about that. Can somebody get the door?
You're 6 foot. Come on. I thought if you were 6 foot, you didn't have to wear or you could take this off.
Really, 6 feet, guys, yeah.
Oh.
Okay, he just wants to wear it.
Yeah, coach. Yeah, it's pretty big.
We just ought to have it. Only do it in 6 feet. As long as you're 6 feet together. All right, so you guys have the quadratic formula written down in your notes. Anybody can help me set this up or just plug in the numbers? Just plug in numbers. Tell me how it looks.
1.
Negative 3.
1 equals.
Let's not forget the x equals part, kids.
1 equals a negative 3.
Let's not forget the x equals part.
Oh, but x is 1.
No, x is not 1.
A is 1.
Negative 3.
Negative 3.
Plus or minus.
Plus or minus.
Square root.
Square root.
3 squared.
3 squared.
Minus a 4. 1. Negative 2. Which is a negative 8 over 2 times 1.
Every time you do a quadratic formula problem, I want to see that. I want to see that you actually can set stuff up. Because that's where a lot of kids actually mess up. It really is. Where a lot of kids mess up. And why don't you guys see if you can figure it out from there. I don't want an S1 answer. Just leave it as a relative one. Figure it out. Do a little math. There's numbers in there. You can figure out what's inside it, right?
I don't know if you can answer this. No.
He's taking tests. Why am I doing? Oh, you made some mistakes. Always show the first step of writing everything down. Okay. Come on, kids, what's 3 squared? Everybody has their math in. What's the -4 times -2?
Positive 8.
Now, I'm not sure how much work you want to show here, but
You still get -3 plus or minus square root 17 over 3.
well, I'm not there yet. I'm still working with the kids who have nothing. 3 squared is 9, -4 times -2 is 8. Yeah, what is 9 plus 8?
17.
Now, that has 2 distinct answers. What's one of them?
Positive.
-3 over 2, right? Plus 17 over 2, or
-3 over 2. Minus.
minus root 17 over 2. Those are your 2 distinct answers. What you got, Spencer?
Could you just use the plus minus sign?
Well, I'm trying to put emphasis. There's 2 distinct answers.
So would it be wrong if you just plus minus sign?
Not necessarily, no. I'm just trying to put emphasis that there's 2 distinct answers there. I guarantee you that 4 or 5 kids in here don't understand that there's not 2 distinct answers. It's not about any one person here, but there's kids that don't understand the whole plus or minus symbol. There are. All right, so we did one of them. The answers, I know you want an answer, you want a decimal, but nobody cares. That's just more time to calculate. Just leave it like that. If the radical would simplify, we'd do something with it. All right, now we'll kind of do this one together to some degree. What's wrong with it?
It's not in the standard form.
Not in standard form.
Add the 3 over.
Now, Stephen, that's the smartest thing you've said all day.
You're serious?
Yes.
Is it?
Stephen made a suggestion of moving that guy over. That's proper, because that keeps a what? Positive. That's something you want to do. You don't want to be working with a negative way. You really don't. You make more mistakes that way. So you keep the 0 on the left. The things that don't move, they don't change signs. Let's go through our ABCs here. Morgan, what's A? There's 3. Jordan, what's B? There you go. Go ahead, Paul. Why don't you guys see what you can do with this one? Oh, hold on. There's something I want to do. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. See those numbers? They're big. This one's kind of got an ugly radical in it. Devin made a suggestion here. I'm glad he did. He suggested pulling 3 because 3, 12, and 15 are all divisible by what? 3. Now, this is optional. But what it does is it makes it easier to work with. That's why you do it. Because now our A values are not 3, 8, 12, and 15. What's in front of that x squared? We get to use 1. What's B? Negative 4. And what's C? 5. You can use those numbers, which are much smaller. So take it from there and see if you can figure out what the answers are. You will have imaginary answers. Okay? This one does not have real answers. That's section 4.6. That's one.
There you go. And then I got a question. Since 4 is negative, would you just, it says minus G? positive. Negative for sure.
Come on, kids, plug into the quadratic formula. All you gotta do is put the numbers in. It's all over 12. You're not done. Break it apart into the same answers. Right. Really close there. Well, you didn't simplify the radical. The radical should not be real. That's a little work. I wish you would use the smaller numbers. Really, use the big numbers. Root of negative 36 is not real, so you put an I in front of radical and make 36 positive. Well, you can't take the square root of 36. Formula is negative. You want formula down in the class? There you go. Why? You're really close to it. That's square root of negative 4.
This row. I doubt it. I should still have
No, the square root of 36 is not the square root of 6. It's just what? 6 or 6.
Plus one?
Should have a plus minus symbol or something. Let's do it negative 3. What? Okay. It's going to be the time I allot for this. So your setup is opposite B. What's opposite of negative 4? Positive 4. Still a handful of y'all that hadn't written this down. Plus or minus square root of a negative 4 that's squared. And if you're not wrapping it in a set of parentheses and you're having to use technology, you're going to get the wrong answer. That's just the way it's going to be. If you type in negative 4 squared in your calculator without parentheses, what does it tell you? If you just type in negative 4 squared in your calculator without parentheses, what does it tell you?
Yeah.
Oh,
So we're done? It says negative.
it says negative 16. But if you use parentheses, what's it tell you?
16.
Positive 16, which is what it is. Minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is 5, all sitting over twice A. Yes. Calculator understands numbers. Perfectly. Now, I saw some of you guys get stuck here. 4 squared, negative 4 squared is 16. What's the negative 4 times 5? So we have 16 minus 20. What do we have?
Negative 4.
We have this, x equals 4, plus or minus the root of a negative 4 sitting over a 2. It's too early to divide that negative 4 and that radical by 2. It's in a radical, can't do anything with it. You guys learned complex numbers the other day. You learned this. You learned that the root of negative 4 is the root of a negative 1 times the root of 4. Well, what's the root of a negative 1? I. That's the root of 4. 2. And you also learned that was fugly, so you wrote it 2i. Didn't you? I was here that day. So this is what I have. 4 plus or minus 2i over 2. Anything about breaking it apart? You've got a 4 over 2. What's that make? 2. There's going to be 2 of them because you have a plus or minus symbol. A 2i over 2. What's that make? 1i. So plus the I and then Minus B. There's two answers. It's not that rough, kids. I don't have time for the retry. That was kind of it.
Can you just keep a plus or minus symbol?
I don't want you doing that. I've been saying that. I really don't. Really don't. Sometimes I'll do it because I'm in a hurry. I really don't want you doing it. By the way, what's the relationship between 2 plus I and 2 minus I? What's the word, Stephen? Conjugates. They're conjugates of each other. Yeah, Spencer, what you got?
I just said we're not gonna do the trial. You know the answer to it?
Nope.
Okay.
Hadn't had time to do it yet today. Going over your homework is eating up way too much class time. Here's the discriminant. Discriminant is the stuff inside the radical. What's inside the radical? What's in it? Quadratic formula, what's in it? What's inside the radical in the quadratic formula?
B squared minus 4AC.
Yes. Oh man, y'all are just killing me. That's the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac. And it tells us the nature of the solutions. What kind of solutions are they? Are they real? Are they imaginary? How many of them are there? Now, when you talk about solutions, solutions is another word for where you cross the x-axis. That's what it means. Solutions are where you cross the x-axis. Okay? All they are, where you cross the x-axis. So here's a parabola in front of us that has two real roots because it crosses the x-axis in two places. That means it has two solutions. That happens in a situation like the first example we did. Did that thing have two real answers? Even though they were radicals, weren't they real numbers? You know, we go to a calculator, type it in, it give us a decimal. So that happens when there's a positive number inside the radical. That's what happens. You have to have a positive number inside the radical here. All right? And to be positive means that you're greater than what? 0. So this happens when the discriminant, b squared minus 4ac, is greater than 0. It's positive. Now, we haven't done an example of this yet. But what would happen is you do the quadratic formula. I'm just making up an example. You do the quadratic formula, and you get something like this. X equals -3 plus or minus root 0 over 4. Well, what's the root of 0? How many answers does that thing end up having? One. Only one answer. That means it only touches the x-axis one time. It's not always at the origin. I just gave you an example of it. It could be anywhere, but it only touches the x-axis one time. In this case, it would actually be at -3/4. It would have touched, over there. That only happens if what's in the radical ends up equaling what? 0. So b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0. Miss Garner would have talked to you about this. She would have spent exactly the amount of time I'm going to talk about it, which isn't much. By the way, why am I showing you graphs of parabolas? What kind of equations have we been studying? Quadratics. What do quadratic equations look like? Parabolas. U's. That's why I'm showing you graphs of parabolas here. Here's our last situation. We have two parabolas that do not touch the x-axis. They don't touch the x-axis. They don't have any real zeros. What they have is, just like we did in the last one that you guys tried, we have two imaginary answers. Okay? And those imaginary answers happen when the stuff trapped inside the radical is what? Less than 0. It's negative. I wish we had time to do all the examples on the next slide, but we don't. By the way, what do I mean by roots? You're seeing that word. That's kind of new. Your Algebra 1 teacher's supposed to use certain terminology with you. 2 real roots. Yeah, because what's kind of the idea of happening underneath? What goes into the ground? Roots. Okay, that's kind of why we call them roots. All right, which one of these is even remotely interesting? We'll give B a shot. Now, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to find the discriminant. Can you find the discriminant as it's written? That's subtract 8. It's got to be in good old STD form. So x squared minus 8x. So we'll get out of there. Minus 8x. What? Plus 8. Now equal to 0. Now we can do the discriminant. What are we supposed to square? What is b? So negative 8 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 8. And we're just going to figure out what that is. (64 minus 32 is right. It is. Which is 32, which is greater than 0. So what do you know? How many solutions does it have? 2 real. 2 real. It crosses the x-axis. How many times? Twice. It's not hard, kids. It's really, really easy. Will there be questions about it tomorrow? Probably. You got to look at your notes. You got to go home and look at your book. You're in Algebra 2. If you're not spending 47 minutes at home doing your homework, which is what we spend in class, you ain't trying. That's how this, once you get into high school, that's the deal. Whatever you spend in class, you spend at home. Here's our last problem. The height of a squirrel as a function of time when launched from a homemade sling is h of t. What do you suppose h of t stands for? Height as a function of time. You tell it 4 seconds, it returns a height. Okay? At what time will the squirrel's height go from increasing to decreasing? Which is when it will actually begin falling. That's a quadratic equation, isn't it? T is squared. That's quadratic. And I mean, just think about the context of the question. You are launching a squirrel into the air. Will it keep going forever? No. Eventually, gravity will win and it will come back down to the ground. So how on earth do I figure out when the squirrel's height goes from increasing to decreasing? Where's that happen at? Vertex.
Vertex. What's interesting about students as I've done this more and more and more is it's vocab that throws you off. It happens at what we call the vertex. Now there's a formula for finding the x-score in the vertex. I know there is. It was on 5 formula quizzes in a row. How do you find the x-score in the vertex? What is it? Negative b over 2a. That's actually the quadratic formula. That is telling you that where you cross the x-axis has symmetry with the vertex. That's what that piece is there for. It's saying the vertex plus or minus this.
Could be 2 and 6.
Yeah, these things aren't in standard form. You know, some kids need to be doing this. Some kids, they just say, oh, it's the second thing I see is b. No, it needs to be in standard form. At least up here in your head, it has to be in standard form. It has to be. What is b actually? B is actually positive 256. And you plug it in the formula, you throw a negative in front of it. Divided by what?
32.
Twice negative 16. I'm just curious, I wanna see you all punch up your calculator, don't share it yet.
I just wanna see you punch up your calculator. I really do. I just wanna see you punch up your calculator. Yeah, I wanna see you punch up your calculator. The reason I'm asking you to do that, you don't have to do it. Really like to see you punch that calculator. Curious, how many of you know what you're actually supposed to do? Why don't you punch that calculator? Let's see how you punch it. Try doing it without doing multiplication. I couple of you guys did negative 2.6 over 2.2. Good for you. Type what I wrote on the board and count that. I want to see if you know how to do it properly. That's what I'm curious about. What I'm curious about is why I'm asking you to do this. Why would you give me an answer? See, a lot of you guys are getting like 2,048. That ain't right. Mine is 8. What you're typing into your calculator,
I'm even double after everything.
what you're typing into your calculator is this. You guys learn PEMDAS. That divides by 2 and then does what? 2 or more. Wrap. You know, if you're that kid who doesn't know what twice negative 16 is, you got to double wrap. So definitely double wrap, please. For the good of all humanity, please double wrap. Okay? It was a joke there. Didn't get that either. Okay. What you got?
I'm done.
Well, good. Put it in the file.
Right,
Yes, you got 8. That's the correct answer.
oh. And this one, well.
That is the correct answer. File it.
Well, we don't.
I won't finish your notes,
But that's okay. Hopefully now you know how to use the calculator. You should all have a copy of homework. You should.
Oh, who passed the
Huh?
Who passed the homework? Thank you.
You don't have your homework to get up here. It's Title 4A.
We'll make it a song.
It already is a song.
No, I'm talking like I'm on wrestling. That's what we want to hit.
Search YouTube. Somebody's already done it.
No, like